There is one region on Earth that sits on more oil than anywhere else. Not slightly more, dramatically more. The Middle East holds somewhere between 48 and 65% of the world's proven conventional oil reserves, depending on how you count. That's not a coincidence. That's not politics. That's geology. And the reason it happened is one of the strangest stories in Earth's history. Because here's what nobody tells you. The oil that powers our world, every car, every flight, every plastic bottle, came from a place that no longer exists. A sea that vanished over 30 million years ago. And the Middle East happened to be sitting right in the middle of it. Most people assume oil is just there, that some parts of the Earth are naturally richer than others in some vague, random way. But randomness has nothing to do with it. There is a precise, step-by-step geological explanation for why one region ended up sitting on the energy reserves that shaped the entire 20th century. And once you understand it, the map of global power starts to make a lot more sense. To understand why, you have to go back roughly 200 million years. The world looked nothing like it does today. The continents were arranged differently, and between what would eventually become Europe, Africa, and Asia, there was an enormous warm, shallow sea called the Tethys Ocean. Not deep and cold like the modern Atlantic or Pacific. Shallow, warm, almost tropical in many places. Sunlight penetrated all the way to the seafloor in some areas, and it was absolutely packed with life. Trillions upon trillions of microscopic organisms, plankton, algae, single-celled bacteria, lived, reproduced, and died in that sea. Every single day, for millions of years, their bodies sank to the bottom. You could not see most of these organisms with the naked eye. Each one was almost nothing. But in aggregate, over geological time, they were building something that would one day be worth more than anything else on Earth. Now here's what made the Tethys different from every other ancient sea on the planet. It had very low oxygen levels at the bottom. That detail matters more than almost anything else in this story. Because normally, when organic material sinks to the seafloor, bacteria immediately get to work. They break it down. They consume it. It rots and disappears back into the water column within decades. But without oxygen, that process slows almost to a complete stop. The dead organic matter just accumulates. A layer after layer after layer. Not rotting, not dissolving, just building up, perfectly preserved, over hundreds of millions of years. A biological record of ancient life, compressed into the rock beneath what we now call Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, and Kuwait. Then the burial began. Over millions of years, sediment piled on top. Rock. Kilometer after kilometer of it, as the Tethys slowly closed and the continental plates continued their endless grinding movement. And as that organic rich layer got pushed deeper and deeper underground, something remarkable happened. It got cooked. The Earth's interior is hot. Temperature rises about 25 to 30 degrees Celsius for every kilometer you go down. At 2 to 4 kilometers depth, the buried organic material reached what geologists call the oil window, a temperature range between roughly 60 and 120 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to chemically transform organic matter, not hot enough to destroy it entirely. Think of it like baking. Too cold and nothing happens. Too hot and you burn it to carbon. But at exactly the right temperature for exactly the right amount of time, something entirely new is created. First, the organic material turned into a waxy substance called kerogen. Then, under continued heat and pressure, that kerogen cracked apart into something far lighter, liquid oil and natural gas. And because oil is lighter than the salty water trapped in the surrounding rock, it started to migrate upward, slowly, over thousands and millions of years, through tiny pores and fractures in the rock. As it moved toward the surface, it would have just leaked out, evaporated, and disappeared forever if it hadn't run into a trap. A geological trap is exactly what it sounds like. Rock layers that have been folded upward by tectonic pressure into a dome shape, with an impermeable layer sitting on top, thick shale, salt, or clay, that oil simply cannot squeeze through. The oil rises, hits that ceiling, and pools. Sometimes for tens of millions of years, slowly building up into the giant underground reservoirs we drill into today. Now here's the part that makes the Middle East truly exceptional. It didn't just have one or two of these conditions. It had all five in exactly the right combination, at exactly the right time in Earth's history. 1. An ancient shallow sea with almost no bottom oxygen, preventing organic matter from decomposing. 2. Unimaginable quantities of microscopic marine life producing that organic matter continuously for hundreds of millions of years. 3. Perfect burial conditions that push the organic material deep enough to reach the oil window without going past it and destroying the oil entirely. 4. The right type of reservoir rock underneath. Highly porous limestone and sandstone that oil could flow into and accumulate in. And 5. A thick sealing layer, usually salt or shale, sitting directly above the reservoir, trapping the oil underground instead of letting it escape to the surface. Miss any single one of those 5 conditions, and you end up with nothing commercially useful. And most of the planet missed at least one. The ancient seas that once covered large parts of Africa? They existed. Life thrived in them. But the sealing layers weren't thick enough, and the oil that formed leaked away over millions of years before it could pool into anything significant. Parts of Europe had the organic material, but not the right reservoir rock. Regions of Australia had shallow ancient seas, but the burial depths were wrong. The material never reached the oil window properly. The Middle East won a geological lottery that took 200 million years to play out, and the prize was the energy foundation of the modern world. Now here's where this stops being just a fascinating science story and becomes something much bigger. That geological accident, a vanished ocean, a unique combination of 5 conditions that came together in one specific region of Earth and almost nowhere else, is the direct foundation of modern geopolitics. It is the reason the Middle East has carried more strategic weight in the last 100 years than almost any other region on Earth. It is the reason foreign powers have stationed fleets in the Persian Gulf, propped up governments, toppled others, and written entire foreign policies around a handful of countries that happen to be sitting on top of a 200-million-year-old geological anomaly. Saudi Arabia alone holds roughly 17% of the world's proven oil reserves. Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, and the UAE add hundreds of billions of barrels more between them. None of this reflects anything those nations built or developed or discovered through ingenuity. And it reflects where the Tethys Ocean happened to be positioned when ancient life was at its most abundant, and what happened to the seafloor sediments when the continental plates eventually shifted, the sea closed, and millions of years of pressure did their work underground. Geography as destiny, geology as power. And there's one more thing worth sitting with before this ends. That oil took hundreds of millions of years to form. The conditions that created it, that specific ocean, that specific life, that specific burial sequence, no longer exist anywhere on Earth. We are burning through those reserves in a few centuries. On any geological timescale, it is not coming back. Not in 1,000 years. Not in 1,000,000. The process that created it required a version of this planet that is simply gone. What we have is what was left behind by an ocean that no longer exists, built from creatures that no longer exist, through a process that will not repeat itself in any time frame that has any meaning to us whatsoever. So the next time you fill up a tank, or board a flight, or pick up anything wrapped in plastic, somewhere buried deep in that transaction is a 200-million-year-old shallow tropical sea, trillions of microscopic organisms, and a very specific set of geological conditions that came together once in one region, under one vanished ocean, and never quite repeated themselves anywhere else on Earth. That's where the oil really is. And now you know exactly why it's there. If this changed how you think about oil, hit the like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, did you know about the Tethys Ocean before this? Because most people have never heard of it, and it basically shaped the entire modern world.